The outsiders are saying it was wrong to fire James Franklin after a 13-win season and an appearance in the college football semifinals. Yeah, James Franklin did a lot of good for this program, but Penn State believes it can do better.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State football, and as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Seyko, and I am your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. And help me to discuss the coaching search, which candidates stand out. It is going to be Pat Koerbler, who's been on the coaching big boards for Penn State for quite some time. We got to start with if Penn State actually made the best guy to fix all of this would have been James Franklin. So we're going to discuss that first. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Friendly reminder to let us know your thoughts down in the comments section. Pat, you've been talking about this over at Black Shoe Diaries, where you write as a beat reporter for Penn State. And the debate is that Penn State, even before we get to the other candidates, that for the most part, people who criticize James Franklin for never winning the big game and that Penn State would never reach a national title are now the same people that are saying, well, Penn State should have never done this. They should have never fired James Franklin. So, I mean, they did not. It was time. The relationship had run its course. All the resources were maxed out. I don't know what else you could do. Penn State did not make the wrong move, certainly.
As always, Zach, thanks for having me on. And right, and we can really deep dive into this, but at the end of the day, like when you or I, right, Penn State fans, if we told someone we were a Penn State fan the last 5 years, the first response was always, oh, Franklin's never going to win the big one, huh? And like as a sports fan, like that is not a fun place to be. Like I'm a really big Penn State fan. I'm a really big Sixers fan. So those are like the two sports I really, really care about. I know I'm wearing a Charlotte Hornets hat, but I'm a Sixers fan. And the fact that after Penn State, Ohio State games on my Twitter timeline, I would see Sixers fans clowning Penn State fans, being like, I can't believe that Penn State lost again. Sixers fans are doing that. If Sixers fans are making fun of your team for always losing big games and never coming out big, I mean, it tells you everything you need to know. So just from an entertainment perspective, which this is what fandom is, like I almost liken it to like a TV show. Like you can have really good actors. You can have even like a really good storyline throughout most of the season. If you know how the show always ends every season, that's not a very good show. And that's kind of where Penn State was at. 10-2, yeah. It was great winning, games against ranked teams or blowing out Maryland or whatever. But to know that we always knew this season, and deep down, right, we knew how the season was going to end, it's just not fun. So that's, at least from like the fan perspective, I don't know how you can say it was the wrong move.
And it goes a little bit further than that, because the national media pundits or people that are writing the columns to dunk on Penn State saying, you made the wrong move, you're going to regret it, you'll be perennially 7-5, 6-6 for the next 10, 15, 20 years. It's because people don't think that Penn State was ever going to be better than good. Maybe they backdoor their way into a college football playoff semifinal, but that's just about it. It's because they don't see Penn State as the institution being better than what it is. All the credit should go to James Franklin. It was his doing. It was never really Penn State. And I can't buy into that, because I hear that, hey, Penn State has a lot of cash that's waiting to be spent on a new coaching staff. I mean, when they went and paid Jim Knowles to be the highest defensive coordinator in all of college football, these moves weren't made lightly. They just fired James Franklin and are prepared to pay him $50 million or so, never to coach another football game. So to say that Penn State isn't a top 10 job, or at a very minimum top 15, if you want to debate some different things, it's one of the premier jobs in the country. And Penn State at least believes it should be contending for national titles. But I don't know how much. Okay, yes. Can Penn State take a step backwards and be 500 for a few seasons? Potentially. That's the risk. But what were they really risking when they never beat Ohio State? And we mean never. They beat them one time in 2016. They never beat Ohio State. They never beat any of those Michigan teams. Didn't beat Notre Dame. Didn't win the big game. in all of the big games since 2017, Penn State is 0-16. Can it get worse than that? Is it supposed to? I mean, in theory, it can, but Penn State thinks it can at least be better than that, which it should. I think the odds are pretty calculated.
No, and excuse me, but yeah, they should. I talked on Twitter and on blackshoediaries.com a lot just about I think there's only so many jobs and right, whether Penn State fans, you want to say it's a top 5 job, a top 10 job, a top 15 job, right, whatever it might be, like it's all subjective. Like what is the top 5 job for one coach and what is a top 15 job for another coach is it's all up to their opinion. But I think Penn State, and this is just my opinion, there's 18 jobs, I'm not going to list them all out, that I think are like a standard above the rest. Penn State is one of those 18 jobs. And if anyone disagrees with that, I don't know what to tell you. Penn State, right, like when James Franklin took it over, I don't know if it was that type of job. James deserves a ton of credit for getting it to this point. But let's not act like, Penn State prior to James Franklin did not have, rich tradition and didn't have the potential to be this level of job. So James has done a great job getting it back to this point. But, dude, it was time. It was just absolutely time for a change for Penn State, but also for James Franklin too.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, it's just funny to see, some national media pundits say like, oh, like, everyone just always brings up like, Nebraska, right? Nebraska fired Frank Solich and they fired Bo Pelini, and look, they've never been the same since. That's the risk that you have to take. Okay, like if Penn State goes 7-5 and then they go 8-4 and then they go 7-5 and then go 9-3 and then 8-4. Okay, this is what modern college football is. You know what will happen if the next coach only tops that at nine wins? We'll fire him and we'll hire somebody else and we'll try again. This is sports. This is Penn State football. We're trying to win a national championship. We're one of the programs that can realistically look at themselves and, as Pat Kraft said on Monday, can think we can win a national title. So if we ever get to the point, and this really was like the last, I know you've been talking about it a lot, right? Like every big game loss. This year was supposed to be the year. Penn State put a lot into the roster. They put a lot into the coaching staff. And it was just the Oregon game was the cherry on top of like, okay, like, and we talked about it on my podcast after the Oregon game. Like, we didn't think that James Franklin was going to get fired right away. And certainly these last 2 weeks did not help his case. But even if he didn't get fired, we were all in agreement. Like, okay, it's just not going to happen for James at Penn State. And that process is expedited. And here we are now.
And that was just it. You kind of had your clear indication that you weren't going to get where you thought you could with James Franklin. Everything was maxed out, as I had said. And I'm not really sure at the end of the day, okay, the difference between 10-2 and 9-3 or 10-2 and 8-4, it kind of all ends the same. Okay, so you get into the 12-team playoff if you're 10-2, but those teams, they weren't these national, they're not going to be year in and year out national title contending teams. Okay, it's kind of once in a blue moon, as they say. It's not that much of an exaggeration, but that it wasn't going to be a year in and year out thing where it's, Ohio State's at the top. They're in a little bit of a rebuild with all of the turnover that they had, but they're still a national title contender. It would take Penn State a few cycles under James Franklin to be in that situation. So, okay, yeah, you're 10-2. You take the risk of potentially being 7-5 and 8-4, maybe for a couple of seasons, but I don't know how much of a difference that is. It's like, oh, well, then you don't get into the college football playoff. True. But if you get knocked out early, if it's a first round exit, what does it matter? What's the difference?
And here's the thing, and this is for fans and just people who follow sports in general. One of the biggest misguided takes is that, right, fans want consistency. We don't want consistency. Okay, we want consistent winning, like winners, consistent championships for sure. But this idea of like 10-2 will make you any more happy than 9-3 does or 8-4 does, like, no, that's not necessarily true, especially in year 9 and 10 and 11 and 12. And that's the thing with James Franklin. This was year 12. Like, this was year 12. He's been here so long. Just to bring it up, right? Only Power 4 guys who have been at their institutions longer than James: Kirk Ferentz at Iowa, Kyle Whittingham at Utah, Dabo Swinney at Clemson, Mark Stoops at Kentucky, and Dave Duran at NC State. Those are the only guys. So Penn State has lived the James Franklin life, the James Franklin era, for a long time. Anyway, to get back to my point, right? We don't want consistency. Our fans, the most important thing to them is not consistency, it's hope. So even if Penn State, say that they go and they hire, I don't know, let's say Eli Drinkwitz. I know we'll talk about these guys in a little bit.
Yep.
Say they go and they hire Eli Drinkwitz and Penn State goes 7-5 next year.
Mhm.
Say that they sign like the number 11 ranked recruiting class, and then the following year they get some transfers, and then they go 8-4, and then the following year after that they go 10-2. That is hope. That is progress. That is an upward trajectory. Trajectory, a very important word that Pat Kraft used on Monday. He did not think that Penn State was on the upward trajectory, and that was an important part beyond the last 3 games of why Penn State made this move. So I think that's just like the other side of it. Just again, like speaking as a Penn State fan, it's this need for excitement, something new. Maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. I mean, I mentioned before, right? I am a Sixers fan. Back in the process days, like, okay, yeah, the Sixers lost a lot of games, but it was the first time that it felt like the Sixers had hope. And did it work out? I mean, yeah, Sixers don't have a title to look at right now, but right, what's the saying? Fortune favors the bold. I think that's what Penn State is kind of trying for at this point.
Penn State, the institution, got its definitive answer about James Franklin. So now it's trying to figure out who can take you to the promised land, who can get you to where you want to go. Well, it seems like everybody is a candidate for Penn State to get the job, and they'd be the right fit, because that's the correct way to look at this. There are a lot of candidates that would do well at Penn State, but which ones stand out the most? We're going to give you the pros and cons of the main ones coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by SupplyHouse. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with SupplyHouse. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business are available. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting on projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Do you need parts fast for a project? SupplyHouse has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The Part Finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit SupplyHouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's SupplyHouse.com. Real people, real service. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel gives you so many ways to play. You can build parlays, try player props, and even follow live lines during the games. Makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. And yes, lines are available for Penn State versus Iowa. Iowa is favored in this game by 2.5 points, minus 144 on the money line. The total is set at 39.5. If you're thinking Penn State, plus 120 on the money line. Again, visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. So, Pat, this is where it's really your time to shine, because you've been making coaching hot boards for the longest time. You know, I think before Franklin, you theorized different coaching boards that included James Franklin once upon a time. So you've had practice with this, and you get back to a niche skill set that for Penn, hasn't been utilized. But here we are again. So we're going to go with the off the wall category. Off the wall coaches that would be hired, or potentially Mike Elko, Marcus Freeman. I don't think that's going to happen, but those would be the home run slam dunk hires. Yeah, Penn State's going to make a phone call. Curt Cignetti's going to be up there. The ones that are a little more realistic, though, Matt Rhule, Manny Diaz, and I don't think Matt Rhule is actually as bad of a candidate as people are making him out to be. Is it the flashiest hire? No, but it's not dead wrong. Penn State shouldn't want him whatsoever, because I kind of liked hearing Terry Smith, the interim head coach, and he'd be a candidate in this race too, especially if he succeeds for the remainder of the season, where I just like hearing a coach say how much they appreciate Penn State University. And for a fact that you would get that from Terry Smith and Matt Rhule at a minimum, that they would, because it's their alma mater. And why wouldn't they like it and appreciate it?
Listen, here's the thing with Matt Rhule. he's not in my top 5. Like he's not. Like I especially like coming after James in 2016, like he was far and away number 1. Like he would have been the pick if
would have been, yeah.
Right, James Franklin loses to Minnesota, and they never beat Ohio State in the end that year, 6-6 or 7-5, like they had. Right, Penn State probably gets rid of James Franklin, and they almost assuredly hire Matt Rhule, because that's probably what Penn State needed at that point. I don't know if Penn State needs someone like Matt Rhule right now, but that does not mean that like Matt Rhule is a terrible coach, which like weirdly like I don't know like where this narrative has come with Penn State fans. I mean, it really is just his record against top 25 teams, which yes, 0-18 since he's left Temple is not good. It's not good. You want to beat some ranked teams, not top 10 teams, not top 15 teams, just ranked teams in general. So I think that's where a lot of the I don't want to say the disgust, but right the angst with Rhule from Penn State fans comes from. But I don't like have again. This kind of goes back to like the hope thing. Like maybe I'm just an idiot, but I could at least appreciate someone like Rhule, who I think would galvanize the fan base. And I think back to a time when Penn State hired Bill O'Brien, and Zach, people were not happy when they hired Bill O'Brien. Like there were very, very few Penn State fans who had him even in their top 5, their top 10. Bill O'Brien goes to the press conference. He wins everyone over. I think that would happen with Matt Rhule as well. And it's also important to remember that what we see online, what we see on Twitter, what we see on message boards, that is such a small part of the Penn State fan base. So I'm not like greatly concerned about, oh, they hire Matt Rhule, like fans online won't be happy. It'll fracture the fan base. Like it'll be fine. I just do think that Rhule maybe offers some limited upside. And as far as like what I want out of the next coach, I want some excitement specifically on offense. And I don't know if Rhule necessarily brings that, but I don't like really have much of a doubt that Matt Rhule would. I think he would recruit well at Penn State. I think he would get basically, top 15 classes, kind of similar to what Franklin has been doing here, with the chance for more, given how important NIL is. And I think that he could get you to 10, maybe sometimes even 11 wins if he has the right coaching hires. And it just comes down to winning that big game. But maybe Zach, that's just what we're destined for, is always being 10-2 and losing some big games. But
that's what the outsiders say.
Yeah, no, I think that they could. I do think that they could do worse than Matt Rhule. I certainly would not grade the hire as an A.
It's an okay hire. It's okay. It's not there. So who are the best hires? I would say if you can somehow get Mike Elko, and I think Mike Elko is a little more. It's not too realistic, but when you say, Ryan Day, Marcus Freeman, Mike Elko's not in that category where it's totally impossible. He went to Penn, New Jersey. He's from the New Jersey area. It would make sense for him to move to the Big Ten, especially being a defensive-minded head coach. But Texas A&M is going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that he stays head coach. So who are the top 3? I would say Eli Drinkowitz is there, Matt Campbell, as far as the combination of realistic, best available hires for Penn State. Those are the first 2 that come to mind. Who are your 3 or 4 of those types of candidates? Manny Diaz, maybe?
Yeah, right. The thing with like what makes a realistic candidate and what doesn't is kind of timing as well, right? It's like the same thing with like people in their dating life, right? Like you can have chemistry with someone, but if the timing isn't right and both people's lives, then it doesn't really matter. And I kind of think like that's the thing with Mike Elko. It's only his second year at Texas A&M. He has them in a really good spot right now. He probably wants to see that through. And almost right. Same thing with like Kurt Cignetti, who I don't know if you want to talk about him or not, but kind of the same idea of like, I think if Cignetti and Indiana had lost to Oregon last week, I think it's more open for discussion. But the fact that Indiana now, they have a very clear path to the playoff. I don't think they play any more ranked teams if I remember their schedule. So they should win.
They should be projected to win the rest, win out 12-0, go to the Big Ten championship against Ohio State. Yeah.
But right, if you have Indiana and you're a 5 seed in the playoff, like he is going to want to see that through. That's my guess. At least this season, right? As far as time goes. Anyway, as far as guys that are realistic, I really, really hope that Kenny Dillingham can be counted as realistic. Again, he's another guy like timing wise. He's an Arizona State grad. This is only his 3rd year there. Maybe he wants to see that through as well. But I do think that like in a weird way for him, winning the Big 12 last year and now kind of having not a down season, but they're 4-2. They're dealing with some injuries, and he's seen the bigger picture of it's going to be hard to build a real contender at Arizona State. And he's seeing it that, right, with these injuries, it only takes 1 or 2 injuries at a place like Arizona State that it could.
It'd be nice, and he's talked about not having a general manager. I don't think he's complaining. I think he's seeing the reality of it. Penn State has those things. Penn State has those amenities, whereas Arizona State might not be able to, can't, or won't have them for the foreseeable future. And then do you kind of hurt your coaching stock in part to stay committed to all of that? So I don't know, but Kenny Dillingham is one of those rising star candidates. I think Will Stein is in the same category, even though he's a coordinator, because if you're going for the coordinator route, you're going with Brian Hartline or Will Stein.
So the names that I do have, and not to like take 5 minutes to talk about every single one, but as I mentioned before, I kind of want to go after an offensive minded guy. I want to go after guys that, have proven that they can do well with quarterbacks and quarterback development. Because, right, like I don't want to say low key, it was an issue with Franklin, but you look at from Trace McSorley to Sean Clifford to Drew Aller. Mm-hmm. And I say this as Trace McSorley is my hero, literally. Yep. None of those guys ever really got that much better. Like Drew, bits and points from 2023, 2004 got better. I'm not saying that like Sean Clifford didn't get a little bit better, or that Trace Bright. None of those guys ever like fully like developed. It all felt like they plateaued. So I think whoever you get, you want to be looking at offensive-minded guys and guys that have done some good stuff with quarterbacks. Just mentioned Kenny Dillingham before. Eli Drinkwitz, I think, you mentioned him. I think he'd be.
You get Bo Perbula back.
And you get Bo as well, which would make Penn State. That might make Penn State fans more happy than bringing Joe Paterno from the dead. Getting Bo Perbula back, like, come on. You mentioned Will Stein. Brian Hartline, he's only in his first year play calling at Ohio State, but clearly doing a pretty damn good job. The other guy that I want to throw out that I have not seen get a lot of run, which is interesting because I feel like almost every other Power 4 coach that's been mentioned is Jeff Brom at Louisville. And we talked about him.
Yeah.
And again, he is another guy that like Dillingham and like who else am I forgetting? Somebody else that is an alum. Certainly like Dillingham, Arizona State alum. Jeff Brom is
Joe Brady?
Alum. What was that?
Are you thinking Joe Brady? Because
no, I was saying.
Okay.
No, I was saying like, right. Nobody thinks that Kenny Dillingham is going to leave Arizona State because he's an alum, and maybe people are thinking that as well with Jeff Brom, that he's an alum and he's not going to leave as well. But
okay.
He's in his 3rd year at Louisville. He's another guy that I think maybe he's seen the bigger picture of what the Louisville job is as far as like sort of plateauing. Like
it's limitations.
Right. You're going to go 8-4. You're going to go 9-3. Maybe you have a 10-2 season here and there, but right, like Louisville's never going to win a national title. So those are guys that kind of just stick out to me as far as, again, offensive-minded quarterback guys. Just because, again, I want some excitement. I want some change. And to see a Penn State offense that is a little bit more fun would be entertaining for me.
If you want to talk about excitement and change, well, one of the candidates that we didn't initially mention, but it might actually be a little more realistic than people think, Urban Meyer coming out of retirement and leading Penn State football. Let's discuss the idea of Urban Meyer coming in for Penn State, what that would actually mean, because some people are alluding to the fact that it is likelier than it seems. We'll talk about it next year on Locked On Nittany Lions. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIH Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how we craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. And with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Urban Meyer, Penn State football head coach. Well, it seems off the wall, because it is, right? That is certainly an uncharacteristic hire. People don't know the full story of this. So this goes all the way back to before he took the job at Ohio State, that there was an agreement drafted up. He had property at in-state college, Boalsburg to be exact, before everything fell apart for Penn State, that Joe Paterno was in favor of anybody taking over Penn State if he were to retire on his terms at the time that Urban Meyer was to take over. So there is still a portion of the powers that be at Penn State. This is my opinion. I'm not here to confirm this or report this. In my opinion, if that was the case, there are probably still powerful people at Penn State that believe that Urban Meyer should be the head coach at Penn State, even though it's nearly a decade later.
Yeah, I mean, every time that a college,
it's weird. It's
right.
weird and it's toxic. And you have how he was ousted at Ohio State. Obviously the 1 year, if that 1 year at Jacksonville. So and he's been retired. He hasn't dealt with the NIL stuff. So on the surface of things, it looks toxic. It looks stupid. But he can coach football. And I wonder if retirement maybe kind of settled things down for him. Here's what I would need if Urban Meyer was to be the head coach: is there is an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator rising star that is basically the protege in waiting, that he's basically there to get Penn State on the right path, create a winning culture, and then in 2 to 3 years, pass it off to that superstar coordinator that ends up coaching for, hopefully, this is the best case scenario, 15, 20, 25 years at Penn State.
Yeah. And Urban gets brought up in just about any notable time that a program is looking for a coach. Urban Meyer is going to get brought up. I don't think it's particularly realistic. I do think it's at least Urban is a little bit more realistic than Nick Saban. There's a 0% chance that Nick Saban is coming to Penn State. Maybe there's a 2% chance that Urban Meyer decides on Penn State. More likely than that, he stays retired. My questions about him would be, and you mentioned a lot has changed since his last season in college, which was 2018, as far as NIL goes. I don't believe that Urban's a big proponent of NIL, and just basically,
why should he be?
Yeah, like every other coach that coached in these previous eras. So you would need assurances on that front that he is bought in and he is okay with that. But I think the idea with Urban would be that if he takes a college job, he's a psychopath and he's going to do everything that he can to win. So, if for whatever reason Urban was okay, I'll come coach Penn State again, don't think it's very realistic. No, I would be excited. He's won everywhere he's been. He's won from Bowling Green to Utah, taking them to the Fiesta Bowl, to winning national titles at Florida and Ohio State. Okay, it didn't work out with the Jaguars. I greatly don't care about
how many coaches do work out with the Jacksonville Jaguars
and just the NFL in general. I mean, it's a crapshoot. Nick Saban, he flamed out with the Miami Dolphins. Pete Carroll, I know he eventually went back to the NFL, but he had some rough stints as well. So NFL success, it's just a completely different game. So I wouldn't greatly care about the fact that he flamed out pretty quickly with the Jaguars. But again, I don't think we're going to have to worry about Urban Meyer, because I don't think that he's going to be a real candidate. But I certainly think that Pat Kraft and the Penn State powers that be will reach out to Meyer or his team and at least gauge some interest. So who knows?
And that's why it's to kind of go back to the legacy of Penn State, right? Joe Paterno coached for a lot of years, and that's why Matt Rhule has such intrigue. I'm surprised I haven't seen more of Al Golden and his name being mentioned, because I know that he wanted the Penn State head coaching job once upon a time. He was just the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, so he understands the NIL, the nuances of this current age of college football. He did get out of it by going to the Cincinnati Bengals, but the Cincinnati Bengals might fire him after a year because the defense is so atrocious. So, that's why I started this conversation by saying there are a lot of names that are going to pop up in this coaching search, and I really don't have an indication as far as who's going to be the guy, who's definitely not the guy, other than I'll tell you who's definitely not getting the job. It's a John Gruden, it's Lane Kiffin, right? It's Ryan Day, it's Marcus Freeman, but I would not count out Urban Meyer. I would not count out a Mike Elko. I would not count out somebody like a Joe Brady's actually listed as the betting odds-on favorite, the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills, to be the head coach at Penn State. Why? Because of his connection with Terry Pagula, who is a huge funder of Penn State athletics. He owns the Buffalo Bills. So
also the night after the Bills struggle a little bit offensively, that all of a sudden it's
maybe Joe Brady. They're injured. That's not a Joe Brady thing. They're a little banged up right now. But
No,
that's what I mean.
I know that originally there was, a lot of reporting of the search starts and ends with Matt Rhule, and maybe it does. Like, right? I think if everyone that follows this had to pick one person right now, right, we would all probably say Matt Rhule is like the safest bet. But I don't think that this is as simple as Pat Kraft is texted Matt Rhule the other day and was like, "Hey, bud, want the Penn State job?" And Matt Rhule replied, "LOL, yes." And like that's just it. And Pat Kraft isn't doing anything. The college football season is super young. Like Nebraska goes to Minnesota this Friday, and if Nebraska loses, and then they lose to USC, and then they go into Penn State, and somehow Terry Smith beats Matt Rhule, like, yeah, Matt Rhule's not going to be Penn State's coach anymore. So I say that about Matt Rhule, but I say that about like all these guys, from Manny Diaz to Kenny Dillingham to Jeff Brom to Matt Campbell, like, and even guys that maybe aren't in like Penn State's peer view. Like I know you mentioned Lane Kiffin. I don't think Lane Kiffin is particularly realistic for Penn State, just because I don't see him. I certainly don't see him at Penn State, but I just don't see him at the Big Ten in general. But like, yeah, right now Lane Kiffin has Ole Miss undefeated. But if for whatever reason Ole Miss loses 3 games and they miss the playoff again, do we see Lane Kiffin jump on down to Florida? Like, there's still just a lot of season left. Things are going to change. As Penn State fans, we should realize more than anyone, like 3 weeks can change a lot in college football. So these, the hot boards and big boards, trust me, they're a lot of fun, but they're living, breathing things, and they're fluid and they're going to change over time. So yeah, it's going to be a wild couple of weeks.
And we're going to have them all, talk about all of them. The rumors, the way things are trending. Where there's smoke, there is fire. So we're going to discuss all of it. Pat, I'm eager to get you back on the show as necessary as possible with, all the updates that we're going to get, because Penn State is driving the coaching market here. A lot of people are going to get raises, not only head coaches, but assistants as well. There's going to be rumors. There's going to be guys that jump into the mix. There are going to be people that are taken off of Pat Kraft's list, but there are dozens and dozens of names that are actually realistic for Penn State to take this job. And right now, we don't know who it's going to be, but we're going to try to make our best guess as who it could be. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. That's where we'll put a lid on things. My name is Zach Seyko, your host as always. He is Pat Koerbler of Black Shoe Diaries. Go check out his work down in the description. Pat, thank you so much for the time, and can't wait to pick this conversation back up in the not too distant future with you.
Of course. Thank you as always, Zach.